Good evening. Once again, not at Mount G's, but I am out walking. I need about 3,000 more steps today. So doing that real quick before it gets too dark. I have not been walking much because the time change and it being dark at 5:30, 6 o'clock is not the greatest, but I realized a while ago, so daylight savings time just ended, so we went back to normal, and so this is how God intended for it to be, light-wise, and then in the spring we jump forward and we mess it up. So this is how the world was intended and the universe was created to go. So that's what it is. This past week was a little bit hectic. Again, most weeks are. But I was on call, so that messes up my morning every day that I'm on call. And had a couple other things. Work was just a little bit crazy with seeing people. This month's weird because of the holiday. And how hospice works is I have a quota every week that I need to meet, and I always slightly exceed it, but trying to make sure everyone's getting seen, not overwhelming myself, and trying to plan ahead for the emergencies is not the right word, but when things happen and I need to increase visits with patients, making sure that I've got the flexibility to do that without going in and seeing like plus 50% of the quota that I'm supposed to meet every week. So that's just a fun balancing act to try to do. But the thing that has been kind of on my mind is season of life. And so I just turned 38. Life does not look at all like I thought it would at 38, which is fine. That's one of the things I've learned along the way to 38 is that life doesn't go the way you plan often. And so there's that reality of 40, which it used to be 30 was a huge deal, and then you hit 30 and you're like, I'm not that old. And I'm assuming 40 will probably be the same way, but it's still 40. And so, but beginning to just think in terms of what season of life spring of my life is over. And I'm in the summer, I feel like, but I definitely think the summer of life is beginning to near its end. And then fall begins. And so I think the fall of life is when we see the most fruit, and as in terms of harvest, I think that's when a lot of that begins to come. And so in the spring of life, everything is fresh and new, and you're learning and exploring. And I think the summer of life is where you begin to develop, really, this is the path I'm going to go down, and this is where I want to invest my time and energy. And not that that doesn't change even later in life, but beginning to really focus, this is where I want to spend my energy and where I want to hopefully reap the harvest. And so I'm beginning, I think, to move just realistically, middle age. The average life expectancy for men is 76 or something like that. So I'm past middle age slightly now, or I'm right at middle age. And so by averages, my life is half over. And so I've now entered the fall of my life. And that, again, both my grandfathers were in their mid to late 80s. Both my grandmothers are still alive, and they are in their early 90s. And so we don't know how long we get, but average is the fall of my life is already begun, is about to begin, or is not too far in the future. And so doing just a lot of reflecting, and I definitely think the project I'm working on, the gray notebook that I shared, that's been my passion for a long time, but it has become my driving focus, really. And I definitely think the last decade, so if we, for the sake of averages, say a season of life is 20 years. And so the last half of the summer of my life was navigating that and really putting some direction to that and some body to that, and now getting ready to fully pursue that and begin to see what happens. And so really, I guess right now is take a minute and step back and just think about your life. Where are you? Where have you been? But ultimately, where are you going? And regardless of where you're at, if I could go back and talk to myself 20 years ago, the things I would say and the lessons I would share with myself and the guidance and direction I would try to give myself. And we don't get that luxury of doing this over. We get one shot at this. And so taking everything I've learned and utilizing it to invest in others so that they can make a whole bunch of new mistakes and not learn from the ones I've made and make your own. And so wherever you are in life, just take a minute as we get into the fall, and really fall's winding down and we're in the winter, and I think the winter of our life is our time of reflection, a time of passing it on, of sharing the wisdom and the lessons that we have gained. And so, and not that any of these are set in stone, I think there's overlap with all of them. But I hope I'm not just rambling, because I feel like I might be. But take a minute and step back and reflect on your life. Where are you now? And ultimately, where do you want to go? And what is your destination? And you may not know. And if you don't know, take some time and figure it out. And ask yourself, what makes you come fully alive? And what makes you righteously angry? And I think when those two things line up, you know the direction you want to go in. And so begin to figure that out, and then begin to figure out, how do you do something about it? And like I said, my life at 38 does not look at all like I thought it would be. I had ambitions as a 18-year-old, 20-year-old, 22-year-old of pastoring some large megachurch. And now I'm at the point I don't really believe in or agree with the traditional American church model. And so that has changed. But the desire to work with people, to teach people who is God and how do we live our lives in service to Him and walking with Him, that has stayed consistent. And I think over the last 2 decades, specifically the last decade, that has been really channeled and directed, and that is now where I am trying to focus however much time I have left. And hopefully it's several decades. I genuinely would love that. And part of me is waiting for Jesus to show up any minute, which realistically could happen. It's been a realistic possibility for the last 2,000 years. And so trying to be diligent with my time and utilizing it to the best of my abilities to bring glory to God, because that is what life is about. So the meaning of life is to glorify God. There you go. I've answered that question. So if nothing else from this is that's the meaning of life, is glorify God. Anyway, again, I feel like I'm rambling, but that is where I'm at, is reflecting on life and looking at how do I want to spend the rest of it. So take some time and do that, and don't waste it. But again, figure out what makes you come fully alive, what makes you righteously angry, and how do you invest your time and energy into that. So I hope you have a good night. I hope you learn to walk with God and walk with Him more closely every day. I hope you find your passion. And more on that to come from the Gray Notebook. But I hope you have a good night, a good week. I will talk to you soon. Bye.